The Zereth Dominion, a powerful and technologically advanced alien race, had long looked upon Earth with disdain. They saw the human race as weak, primitive, and not worth their time or attention. The Zereth had conquered countless worlds across the galaxy, and their strength was unmatched. Their technology was far beyond anything humans could imagine, and they believed that Earth, with its primitive ways and simple machines, would fall easily to their superior might. For years, the humans lived in ignorance, unaware of the looming threat that would soon change their lives forever. But all of that was about to change. The Zereth Dominion had decided that Earth was no longer worth ignoring. The humans, they believed, were a threat to their plans of universal domination. The time had come to eradicate humanity once and for all. The Zereth assembled a massive fleet of warships, each equipped with advanced cloaking devices, artificial intelligence-controlled drones, and weapons that could obliterate entire cities in a single strike. These warships were the pinnacle of Zereth engineering, designed to ensure that no enemy could ever stand against them. As the fleet cruised silently through space, they arrived just beyond Earth's atmosphere, concealed by their cloaking technology. The Zereth were confident that the humans would never see them coming. They had studied Earth for years, watched its every move, and concluded that humanity was unprepared for such an invasion. The aliens believed they would meet no resistance. This would be an easy victory. But what the Zereth didn't anticipate was the quiet strength of humanity, a strength that could not be measured by weapons or technology alone. Humans had an unbreakable will to survive, a drive to fight against all odds, and the element of surprise was their secret weapon. As the Zereth prepared to strike, Earth's response was nowhere to be found. There was no sign of the humans scrambling to defend themselves, no military broadcasts, no emergency alerts. The silence from Earth was eerie, sending a wave of confusion through the Zereth ranks. For a moment, the aliens questioned whether they had arrived at the right time or place. Perhaps, they wondered, humanity had already surrendered without a fight. But they quickly dismissed that thought. The humans were nothing more than an inconvenience to be wiped away, and it would be over soon. Suddenly, without warning, a message flashed across the Zereth warship's communication systems. It wasn't a military command, nor was it a plea for mercy. It was a single, simple message from Earth, broadcast directly into the heart of the alien fleet. It read, "We have been watching. Prepare for a fight you will regret." The message came and went in a flash, leaving the Zereth stunned. The words hung in the air for a moment, the weight of their meaning sinking in. The aliens had expected Earth to be silent, to accept their fate without resistance. But now, something was wrong. This was no ordinary message. It was a warning, and it was the first sign that Earth wasn't as helpless as they thought. The Zereth leaders and their commanders exchanged uneasy glances. They had underestimated humanity. They had expected an easy victory, but now they realized that the humans were more than they appeared. The fleet's commander, a ruthless alien named Valroth, gripped the armrest of his chair, staring at the empty communication screen. His mind raced as he tried to process what this could mean. Could there be some secret weapon the humans were hiding? Had they discovered something that could challenge the Zereth's dominance? The Zereth quickly dismissed these thoughts, putting their confidence back in place. They had come to Earth to destroy, and destroy they would. The aliens sent orders to begin their attack immediately. The fleet readied their weapons, and the warships began to power up their engines, ready to launch an assault on the unsuspecting planet below. But something was different this time. The entire fleet had now shifted its focus. Each ship locked onto Earth with renewed determination. There was a tension in the air, as though the very fabric of the universe was holding its breath. And just as the Zereth prepared to release their deadly barrage, the human response came once again. This time, it wasn't a message. Instead, a bright, blinding light appeared in the sky, visible even from space. It wasn't a natural phenomenon. It was a signal. The Zereth were momentarily blinded by the intensity of the light, and as their eyes adjusted, they saw something they had never expected. The Earth's defense systems were active. At first, it seemed like a mere flicker of light, but as the seconds passed, the scale of what the Zereth had just witnessed began to dawn on them. A fleet of stealth ships, unlike anything the aliens had ever seen, emerged from the planet's atmosphere, rising into the vast emptiness of space. These ships had no visible weapons. Their designs were sleek, almost organic in appearance, and they seemed to shimmer with a strange, otherworldly energy. They weren't visible on the Zereth's sensors, and they didn't register on the alien fleet's radar systems. The humans had somehow learned to cloak their ships from the most advanced technology in the galaxy. This was the first shock to the Zereth. The humans were not as helpless as they had believed. The alien commanders scrambled to adjust their battle plans. They ordered their fleet to open fire on the incoming ships, but their weapons fired into empty space. The cloaked human ships dodged the blasts with ease, maneuvering through the stars with incredible agility. The Zereth were completely unprepared for this kind of resistance. The fleet's AI systems struggled to track the human ships, constantly feeding false data to their commanders. Every time they locked onto a target, it vanished from their view, only to reappear somewhere else, forcing the Zereth to fire blindly into the void. This wasn't the easy victory they had planned. The human fleet had just proven they were not as weak and primitive as the Zereth had believed. The tension escalated. The humans were fighting back. The Zereth fleet, which had come to Earth with every expectation of crushing humanity in moments, now faced a challenge unlike any they had encountered before. The story of their victory had turned into a story of doubt and fear. For the first time in the battle, Valroth felt something he hadn't experienced in a long time: uncertainty. He quickly ordered his fleet to shift to a new attack pattern, but deep inside, he knew things weren't going according to plan. Earth had shown them something unexpected. They had shown them that humanity was not just a target to be obliterated. Humans were far more resilient, far more resourceful, and far more dangerous than anyone could have imagined. And with that, the tension in the air only grew. The real fight was just about to begin. The Zereth were no longer facing an easy conquest. Now, they were facing an enemy unlike any they had ever encountered. Humans weren't just going to be defeated, they were going to fight back, and they were going to make the Zereth regret underestimating them. The aliens had made a mistake. The humans were ready to show them exactly what they were capable of. The countdown to battle had begun, and there was no turning back. The Zereth Dominion's fleet had already cloaked themselves in the vastness of space, their ships hidden from human radar and detection systems. It was the perfect strategy. The Zereth were used to overwhelming their enemies with surprise and superior technology. After all, they had defeated countless civilizations without breaking a sweat. But Earth was different, or so they quickly learned. The alien ships, with their sleek forms and deadly weapons, powered up and prepared for the first wave of attack. Valroth, the fleet commander, stood in front of the massive control panel in his warship, his eyes scanning the readouts. He could see Earth's orbital defense platforms, massive, towering structures designed to protect the planet from attacks from space. They were ancient by Zereth standards, almost laughable in their simplicity. But in the eyes of Valroth and his fleet, these platforms were nothing more than obstacles in the way of their mission. Without hesitation, Valroth gave the order to fire. The massive energy cannons aboard the warships erupted, sending powerful blasts toward the orbital defense systems. The first few shots connected, sending huge explosions into the sky, breaking apart satellite after satellite. The Zereth fleet was confident that the humans, who had shown no sign of resistance, would be easily crushed. However, something unexpected happened. Before they could deliver a second round of attacks, the Zereth warships detected something they had not anticipated. A small group of human ships appeared, seemingly out of nowhere, cloaked in a way that had never been seen before. These ships weren't as advanced in size or firepower as the Zereth's massive warships, but they were fast, extremely fast. The ships were equipped with advanced stealth technology that allowed them to slip past the Zereth sensors and radar undetected. The first wave of Zereth fire missed its target completely. Valroth's eyes narrowed. How were these humans doing this? He had been sure their advanced cloaking technology was foolproof. How were humans, primitive humans, able to turn their own weapons against them? Something wasn't right. The human fleet, though smaller, was well coordinated. They struck with deadly precision. The stealth ships darted in and out of the alien fleet like shadows, targeting the Zereth warship's weak spots. They fired EMP pulses that spread through the alien fleet's systems, rendering Zereth weapons useless. The Zereth were unable to respond, their once perfect targeting systems going haywire. Drones, controlled by AI, began to launch from human ships, flooding the space around the alien fleet. These AI-driven drones were small but extremely effective. They swarmed over the Zereth ships, attaching themselves to their hulls and causing disruptions in their engines and weapon systems. The Zereth fleet had never encountered anything like this. They were being overwhelmed by seemingly low-tech human forces, and it was causing chaos. Every time they attempted to fire their weapons, they were met with interference, as if the very air around them had become hostile. The Zereth tried to lock on to the stealth ships with their advanced sensors, but the human ships moved too quickly, appearing and disappearing like ghosts. It was a game of cat and mouse, but the aliens were losing. Valroth slammed his fist on the control panel. "What is happening? Why can't we lock on to their ships?" he shouted, his voice full of frustration. One of his officers, a younger alien named Zilor, looked at the data readouts and shook his head. "Their technology is interfering with our systems. They are using something we've never encountered before, some form of electromagnetic interference. It's disabling our weapons." The realization hit Valroth like a ton of bricks. Earth was not as primitive as he had thought. The humans had technology they had hidden, waiting for the right moment. The Zereth had underestimated them. What was supposed to be a simple invasion was quickly spiraling into a nightmare. Meanwhile, down on Earth, the situation was tense but full of determination. The humans were using every weapon in their arsenal to fight back. Hidden under the surface of the planet were secret military bases, weapons systems, and advanced technologies that had been developed in secret for years. Earth's leaders had known that a day like this might come. They had prepared in silence, waiting for the moment when humanity would need to fight back against a much stronger enemy. In a high-security command center, the human forces watched the battle unfold on giant screens. The first few moments had been chaotic, with orbital defense platforms taking heavy damage. But now, with the help of their cloaked ships, AI drones, and EMP pulses, Earth's forces had turned the tide. For the first time in the battle, the Zereth fleet was on the defensive. The human commanders on the ground knew that this was their moment. They had to strike while the Zereth were confused and disoriented. Every piece of military technology they had was now in play. There was no turning back. The fight for Earth had begun, and the humans were determined to win. Back in space, the Zereth had no idea how to respond. Their once pristine fleet, which had been sent to wipe out humanity in an instant, was now falling into disarray. The Zereth struggled to adapt. The AI drones attacking them were constantly morphing and changing tactics, adapting to every move the Zereth fleet made. The Zereth ships fired wildly, but their blasts were now missing their targets. Their cloaking systems, which had once been perfect, were failing as the stealth ships and EMP pulses overwhelmed them. Valroth's mind raced. The Zereth had always been the masters of space warfare, but now they were losing to a force they had never seen coming. Their superiority in technology, once thought to be invincible, was now being shattered by the humans' unexpected resilience. Earth's forces were small, but they were adapting quickly, and they were making the Zereth regret their invasion. As the battle continued, the Zereth tried to regroup, but the damage was done. The humans were no longer the helpless, defenseless creatures the Zereth had thought them to be. They were a force to be reckoned with, and the aliens were realizing, too late, that they had made a grave mistake. Humanity's ability to adapt in the heat of battle was one of their greatest strengths, and it was now being tested to its limit. The Zereth, once so sure of their victory, were now fighting for their survival. In the cold expanse of space, the battle raged on. The humans had shown the Zereth one undeniable truth, that underestimating humanity could cost even the most powerful of empires everything. The suspense grew as the battle escalated, with both sides locked in a fierce struggle. But one thing was clear: the aliens would never forget the lesson they were about to learn. The battle for Earth was escalating into something no one could have predicted. As the Zereth Dominion's fleet continued to falter under the pressure of humanity's unexpected defenses, one human soldier, in particular, was beginning to make his mark. Bonner, a young but determined soldier, was about to become a symbol of human resilience, a symbol that would ignite the fire of hope in a war-torn Earth. Bonner had always been an ordinary soldier in the eyes of his superiors. He wasn't a seasoned commander or a brilliant tactician, but he had something the Zereth hadn't accounted for: an unshakable will to fight, and a deep love for his planet. As the battle against the Zereth raged on, Bonner and his team were tasked with a highly dangerous mission: infiltrate the alien fleet, plant covert bombs on their warships, and cripple the Zereth's technological advantage from the inside. It was a suicide mission, but Bonner didn't hesitate. He and his squad had trained for this moment, and now they would give everything to protect Earth. The operation was tense from the start. Bonner and his team boarded their small stealth vessels and made their way toward the heart of the Zereth fleet. The aliens had no idea they were coming. Human stealth technology had allowed them to slip past the Zereth's sensors unnoticed. As Bonner's ship approached the first of the Zereth warships, he couldn't help but feel the weight of the mission on his shoulders. Every step he took now could determine the fate of humanity. His heart pounded as they infiltrated the massive alien warship. Inside, it was like a labyrinth of metallic corridors, strange alien architecture, and unnerving silence. Bonner and his team moved quickly, planting the bombs on critical systems, power generators, communication nodes, and weapon systems, anything that would give them the upper hand. But just as they thought they were in the clear, the ship's security systems activated. Without warning, mechanical doors slammed shut, sealing them in. The team barely had time to react before a horde of Zereth robots and mechs emerged from the shadows. The machines were terrifying, built for one thing: to destroy. They were faster, stronger, and more powerful than anything Bonner had ever faced, and the soldiers knew they were outmatched. The first wave of robots charged, their glowing red eyes fixed on Bonner and his team. The humans fought back with everything they had: plasma rifles, grenades, and hand-to-hand combat. But the sheer strength and advanced weaponry of the Zereth robots quickly pushed them to the edge. The battle was fast, brutal, and unforgiving. Bonner's team fought with relentless courage, but they were fighting an enemy with overwhelming technological superiority. The sound of laser fire and explosions echoed through the metallic halls, and Bonner could feel the heat from the blasts as they narrowly dodged death at every turn. Amidst the chaos, Bonner's best friend and fellow soldier, Riker, was severely injured while defending one of the team's bombers. The scene unfolded in slow motion as Bonner watched his friend, once a strong and unbreakable soldier, fall to the ground after taking a fatal blast from one of the Zereth mechs. Bonner rushed to his side, but it was too late. Riker's eyes flickered with the last remnants of life, and with his final breath, he spoke one word: fight. It was a moment that shattered Bonner's heart, but it also solidified his resolve. Riker had given his life for the mission, for Earth, and Bonner wasn't about to let that sacrifice be in vain. His eyes, filled with anger and determination, turned toward the advancing Zereth robots. The fear that had been there earlier was gone now, replaced by something far stronger: vengeance. He had to survive. He had to finish the mission, not just for Riker, but for humanity. Bonner vowed then and there to make the Zereth pay for what they had done. The mission was no longer just about sabotage. It was about survival, about humanity's will to live, and to fight for their home. Bonner gathered the remaining members of his team and led them with renewed vigor, fighting through wave after wave of Zereth mechs. Their weapons were running low, and their bodies were battered, but the soldiers pushed forward, determined to plant the final charges and cripple the alien warships from within. As they reached the heart of the Zereth warship, Bonner and his team planted the last bomb, a massive payload that would cripple the Zereth's command center. They set the timer, but before they could escape, they were cornered by the remaining Zereth mechs. Bonner was out of options. The Zereth were closing in, and all he could do was make one final stand. But just as the mechs were about to strike, something incredible happened. The human forces on the outside, the ones coordinating the battle on Earth, launched a massive coordinated assault. The EMP pulses, drones, and stealth ships had prepared the perfect opening for Bonner's team. As the mechs advanced, Earth's military forces attacked with renewed power, creating a diversion that allowed Bonner and his squad to escape just in time. With the bomb planted, the final charge detonated as Bonner's team made their way back to the extraction point. The massive Zereth warship began to break apart, sending shockwaves through the alien fleet. The explosions rippled through the Zereth fleet, and their control over the situation began to crumble. Bonner's mission was a success. The Zereth had lost their upper hand, and the tide of the battle had officially turned in humanity's favor. But the victory came at a heavy cost. Riker was gone. Many others had fallen. Bonner's heart was heavy with grief, but his eyes burned with a newfound fire. He had become more than just a soldier. He had become the symbol of human resilience. The alien invaders had made the mistake of underestimating humanity's willpower, and they would soon learn just how much that would cost them. Back in space, the Zereth fleet was falling apart. Their once perfectly executed invasion was now in chaos. They had lost key ships, their command center was in ruins, and their ability to control the fight was slipping away. The aliens, who had once been so sure of their superiority, were now scrambling to maintain any form of dominance. Valroth, the Zereth fleet commander, looked out over the battlefield in disbelief. The humans had turned the tide of the war with a determination that he had not seen before. He had underestimated them. He had thought their primitive minds would crumble beneath the weight of the Zereth Empire. But he was wrong. The humans were stronger than he had ever imagined. As Bonner and his team returned to Earth, the message was clear. Humanity was no longer the underdog. They had proven their ability to fight, to adapt, and to survive. And now they were going to make sure the Zereth paid for every mistake they had made. The battle was far from over, but one thing was certain. Earth had just taken its first step toward victory. The Zereth Dominion had underestimated the humans from the start. What was meant to be a swift, decisive invasion of Earth had turned into a brutal, high-stakes conflict, and the Zereth were now reeling from the consequences of their arrogance. Their fleet had been crippled by humanity's unexpected counterattacks, and their advanced technology was no longer enough to guarantee victory. In their desperation, the Zereth were forced to deploy their most powerful weapons yet, cybernetic soldiers and AI-powered war machines, creatures of terrifying power and precision, bred for destruction. The final battle for Earth had begun. The Zereth forces, now bolstered by their elite soldiers and war machines, prepared for one last push. They knew that their fleet was severely weakened, but they had one advantage left: their overwhelming firepower. Armed with weapons that could decimate entire cities in seconds, they launched a full-scale assault, determined to break Earth's resistance once and for all. They began to advance, cloaked under their high-tech shields, making them nearly invisible to human forces. The Zereth believed that no matter how many surprises Earth threw at them, their final assault would crush any remaining human hope. But the humans had more tricks up their sleeves. Earth's military leaders, recognizing the stakes of the war, decided to gamble everything on one final, desperate countermeasure. They initiated a planetary-wide electromagnetic pulse, EMP, a move that would disrupt the Zerith's cloaking technology and disable their advanced machinery. As the pulse rippled through space, the once invisible Zerith fleet became vulnerable. The cloaking shields faltered, flickered, and then collapsed entirely. The Zerith were exposed, and for the first time in the entire conflict, humanity had the upper hand. The battle that followed was nothing short of chaotic. The Zerith, now visible and vulnerable, scrambled to regain control of their warships, but the humans wasted no time. The skies above Earth darkened with the fire of orbital bombardments as human forces launched wave after wave of missiles, targeting the alien warships and their power cores. The battle was fierce, and the air was thick with the sound of explosions and laser fire. Yet despite being heavily outnumbered, the human forces fought back with a brutal determination that was impossible to ignore. Every soldier, every civilian who had picked up a weapon, stood their ground, unwilling to let their world fall into the hands of an invader. In the midst of this chaos, the ground forces engaged in close-quarters combat. Humans, armed with their trusty rifles, advanced through crumbled cities and burning landscapes, taking on the Zerith's elite cybernetic soldiers. These soldiers were not human. They were hybrids, part machine, part living organism, designed for speed, precision, and ruthless efficiency. But humanity had one thing the Zerith could never replicate: sheer willpower. The human soldiers, though outclassed in technology, fought with a fierce, unrelenting spirit. They were fighting for their families, for their homes, for survival. And that was something the Zerith could not defeat. As the battle progressed, Bonner found himself thrust into the heart of the conflict. His role was no longer just to follow orders or carry out missions. He had become the symbol of humanity's fight against the alien invaders, and as the humans gained ground, his presence on the battlefield served as a rallying cry. But his greatest challenge was yet to come. In the midst of the fighting, the Zerith general, Valroth, appeared. Towering over the battlefield, Valroth was a terrifying figure, a cybernetic mastermind who had commanded the alien fleet and orchestrated the assault on Earth. His glowing eyes, cold and calculating, were locked on Bonner, and he knew this moment had arrived. The time for humans to prove themselves had come, and Valroth was determined to crush their hope once and for all. He believed that the humans, while brave, were ultimately weak and primitive, and that their resistance would crumble before his superior strength and technology. Bonner, covered in dirt and blood from the battle, stood his ground. His rifle felt heavy in his hands, his body sore and tired, but his heart burned with a fierce, unyielding determination. He had already lost so much: Riker, his friends, countless soldiers who had fought for Earth. This battle wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about honoring their sacrifice, about showing the Zerith that humans could not be defeated. As Valroth advanced, Bonner's mind raced. He knew that he was outmatched in every way. The Zerith general was a beast of metal and flesh, enhanced by technology that made him stronger, faster, and more lethal than any human soldier. But Bonner had something that Valroth didn't: the unbreakable will to fight for what was right. Bonner wasn't fighting just for victory. He was fighting for humanity's survival. And that would make all the difference. The two warriors locked eyes, and for a moment, the chaos of the battle seemed to fade. Bonner's heartbeat rang in his ears as the Zerith general lunged toward him with terrifying speed. Bonner barely managed to duck, the blow missing him by inches, and the force of Valroth's attack sent a shockwave through the ground beneath them. Bonner stumbled but quickly regained his footing. He couldn't afford to hesitate. If he did, it would be the end. The fight between Bonner and Valroth was intense, a brutal dance of survival. Bonner's quick reflexes allowed him to dodge most of the Zerith general's attacks, but the alien's strength and speed were overwhelming. Every blow Valroth landed sent Bonner flying across the battlefield, his armor crumpling under the force. But Bonner didn't back down. He couldn't. In a moment of pure instinct, Bonner grabbed one of the fallen Zereth soldiers' plasma rifles and fired at the general, aiming for weak points in his armor. The shot hit its mark, and Valroth staggered, momentarily stunned. This was Bonner's chance. With a swift movement, he launched himself at the general, using the momentum of the fight to his advantage. He landed a crushing blow to Valroth's head, knocking him to the ground. But Valroth wasn't finished. He roared in fury, attempting to rise again. But Bonner was already on him, using everything he had left in him. Bonner's desperation fueled his every move, each strike harder than the last, each hit with the force of a man who knew that the fate of humanity rested on his shoulders. Finally, with one final powerful blow, Bonner crushed Valroth's skull, ending the fight. The alien general lay defeated, and with his death, the morale of the Zereth forces shattered. Their once unbeatable leader was gone, and the remaining soldiers were no match for the humans. Bonner, battered and bruised, stood victorious. The Zereth fleet, now leaderless and crippled, began to retreat, leaving behind their wounded ships and broken forces. Earth's fury had been unleashed, and the Zereth had no choice but to surrender. They had come to Earth to conquer, but in the end, it was the humans who had won. The battle for Earth was far from over, but the first step had been taken. Humanity had proven that even against the most advanced technology, against overwhelming odds, they could still fight, and they would continue to fight until every last invader was driven from their world. The battle was over. The Zereth fleet, broken and beaten, was forced to retreat, leaving behind their advanced war machines and shattered morale. The once mighty general Valroth stood alone among the ruins of his forces, contemplating the unimaginable loss his empire had suffered. He had underestimated humanity at every turn, and now, in the face of overwhelming resistance, he knew the inevitable had arrived. Valroth's pride had been shattered. His people had come to Earth with the belief that humans were weak, primitive, and unworthy of defending themselves against such advanced beings. But now, faced with the reality of humanity's strength and willpower, he could no longer deny that the Zereth were the ones who had been outmatched. The alien general, once so sure of his victory, now stood humbled before the humans. In the days following the retreat, the remnants of the Zereth fleet were brought to Earth. The humans, though victorious, were far from celebratory. The damage caused by the war was evident everywhere. Cities were in ruins, and countless lives had been lost. The cost of victory was steep, and the scars of the battle would never fully heal. Yet despite the tremendous loss, the humans did not seek vengeance. They had won, and their victory was decisive, but they still remained cautious. Bonner, who had become the symbol of humanity's resistance, stood at the forefront of the negotiations. His body was bruised, his uniform tattered, but his eyes burned with the determination that had carried him through the battle. He had fought for his friends, for his family, and for the survival of his people. But now, with the fate of Earth hanging in the balance, it was time for him to make a decision. The Zereth had surrendered, but what would happen next? Valroth, once a towering figure of power and arrogance, now stood before Bonner and the human leadership. His cybernetic enhancements were damaged, his once pristine armor tarnished. He was a shadow of the powerful leader he had been, and he knew it. The alien general, his voice tinged with disbelief, spoke for the first time since the surrender. I see now that we misjudged you," he said, his words slow and deliberate. "We came to Earth expecting an easy victory. We thought you were nothing more than primitives, incapable of defending yourselves. But you are more than we ever imagined." Bonner stared at him, his face hardened, but there was no anger in his eyes. He had lost too much to feel hatred. "We've had enough of your kind," Bonner replied, his voice steady. "We won't let you harm Earth again. If you want to leave, you will never return. But if you dare to break that promise, we'll be ready." Valroth nodded, a deep understanding settling in his mind. He had fought for his empire, but in the end, he had come to respect the humans' resilience. It was something he could never replicate with his advanced technology. "I agree," he said quietly. "The Zereth Empire will never attack Earth again. You have shown us what true strength is." The humans, despite their victory, did not celebrate. Instead, they treated the aliens with a mixture of caution and mercy. The people of Earth had won the battle, but they knew better than to trust the Zereth completely. The surrender of Valroth and his forces had been a necessary step, but it was only the first of many decisions to be made. The humans had learned that victory didn't always bring closure. It often left more questions than answers. As Bonner and his team returned home, they were hailed as heroes. Their names would be remembered for generations to come. They had stood against an impossible enemy and emerged victorious. Yet, as they boarded the transport ship that would take them back to Earth's capital, Bonner couldn't shake the feeling of emptiness that lingered inside him. They had won, yes, but the cost of that victory was heavy. His best friend, Riker, was dead, and though they had avenged him, it didn't bring back the loss. Bonner would carry the memory of that day for the rest of his life. The journey back was quiet, with no words exchanged between the soldiers. The atmosphere was somber as they passed over the remains of cities, the ruins of what had once been thriving centers of life. The human victory was evident, but the price had been steep. The team had lost friends, comrades, and so much more. It wasn't just the physical losses that hurt. It was the emotional toll of the battle that weighed heavily on them. When they finally landed, the full scale of the aftermath became clear. Earth was damaged, but it wasn't broken. Humanity had survived, and though the scars would remain for years to come, the people were resilient. There was a quiet sense of pride in the air, but also an overwhelming sense of grief. Many families had lost loved ones, and countless soldiers had given their lives in the fight. The heroes of the war would never forget the cost of their victory. Bonner walked through the streets, his mind a whirlwind of thoughts and emotions. He had fought to protect his people, but now, the weight of that responsibility was even heavier. The loss of Riker, his closest friend, had left a hole in his heart. He couldn't shake the image of his friend's final moments, the way Riker had fought so fiercely to the very end. It wasn't fair that he had to die. Riker deserved to see the end of the war, to witness the victory that he had helped secure. But instead, he had been taken in the chaos of battle. The ceremony honoring the fallen soldiers was a bittersweet affair. The leaders of Earth stood before the gathered masses, their faces solemn as they spoke of the bravery and sacrifices made during the war. Bonner, despite being recognized as one of the key figures in the victory, could barely bring himself to listen. His heart was heavy, and no amount of praise could fill the void left by his friend's death. But he knew that Riker's sacrifice, like the sacrifices of so many others, had not been in vain. The Zereth had been defeated, and Earth was safe, for now. As the ceremony drew to a close, Bonner stood alone, staring at the monument dedicated to the fallen soldiers. His thoughts were with Riker, and with all the others who had given their lives. They were the true heroes of the war, and their memory would live on in the hearts of all who had witnessed their bravery. Bonner knew that he would never forget them. He couldn't. They had fought for something greater than themselves, something that no one could ever take away. And so the war was over. The Zereth had surrendered, and Earth had emerged victorious. But the scars of the battle would remain, both on the planet and in the hearts of the soldiers who had fought to protect it. For Bonner and his team, the journey was far from over. The fight for humanity's future had just begun. The Zereth might have been defeated, but there would always be new challenges, new battles to face. But Bonner knew one thing for certain. Humanity had proven that no matter how impossible the odds, they would never back down. They would fight until the end, and that was something that no one, not even the Zereth, could ever take away. The war was over, but the consequences of the battle would echo through the stars for years to come. The Zereth Dominion, the powerful alien empire that had once been so sure of their technological superiority, now found themselves returning to their home planet, forever changed by their defeat. The events of the war had shaken them to their core. The once mighty alien race had seen the true strength of humanity, and it had left them in awe. They had come to Earth expecting an easy conquest, believing that their advanced technology and superior firepower would be enough to crush humanity without a second thought. But they had been wrong. The humans had fought with a resilience and ingenuity that no one, not even the Zereth, had expected. Despite being outgunned and outmanned, the human forces had stood their ground, and against all odds, emerged victorious. Now, as the Zereth fleet limped back to their homeworld, the aliens viewed humanity in a new light. They no longer saw Earth as a simple target to be destroyed. They saw a force to be reckoned with, a race that had proven its strength through sheer determination and survival. For the Zereth, this defeat was a humbling experience. The human soldiers, led by people like Bonner, had shown that even the most advanced technology could be overcome by the will to fight and the strength of human spirit. The aliens had underestimated the humans in every way, and now they were forced to reconsider their entire approach to galactic conquest. They realized that Earth was no longer a place they could simply dismiss. Humanity had earned their respect, and the Zereth knew that any future encounters with humans would be met with a far more cautious attitude. Back on Earth, life slowly began to return to normal, but the scars of the battle were still fresh. The war had taken its toll, leaving cities in ruins and countless lives lost. Yet, in the aftermath, there was a sense of unity and resilience that spread across the globe. People who had once been divided by borders, politics, and differences were now bound together by a shared purpose. Humanity had been tested in ways it never had before, and they had emerged stronger for it. The victory over the Zereth was not just a military triumph. It was a symbol of what humanity could accomplish when they came together. It wasn't just about survival. It was about thriving, even in the face of overwhelming odds. The human spirit, once thought to be fragile in the eyes of the Zereth, had proven to be the strongest force in the universe. The war had shown that no matter how impossible the challenge, humans would find a way to rise above it. This newfound unity among humans was celebrated worldwide. Memorials were built to honor those who had fallen in the fight, and the heroes of the war, like Bonner and his team, were celebrated as the champions of Earth. Their courage and determination had inspired an entire generation, and their story became a testament to the strength of the human race. The battles they had fought were not just for victory. They were for the future, for the promise that humanity would never give up, no matter the cost. But even as the celebrations continued, and the wounds of the war began to heal, there was a sense of vigilance in the air. Humanity had shown that they could fight, but they also knew that peace was fragile. The Zereth Dominion might have been defeated, but there were countless other threats lurking in the vastness of space. The human legacy would not be defined just by their victory over the Zereth, but by their ability to adapt and prepare for whatever came next. And so, Earth's advanced space fleet, now fully operational and battle-ready, was placed on high alert. The war had shown that humanity could face the unknown and come out on top, but they knew that there would always be new challenges on the horizon. The stars were vast, and humanity was no longer the underdog in the galactic hierarchy. They had proven their strength, but now they had to be ready to defend that strength against any future threats. The final scene of the story shows Earth's space fleet, a massive armada of ships, poised for whatever might come next. The fleet, powered by the technology and knowledge gained during the war, was now a force to be reckoned with in its own right. The once primitive Earth was now an integral part of the galactic community, and humanity stood tall among the stars. The ships glistened in the vastness of space, ready to defend their planet and protect their people. The final shot lingers on the massive fleet as it drifts into the void, a symbol of the indomitable will of humanity. In the midst of this new era of strength, a message is broadcast across the planet. In the face of overwhelming odds, humanity fights not just to survive, but to thrive. This message becomes the rallying cry of a new generation, one that is not just focused on surviving in a harsh universe, but on thriving within it. Humanity's victory over the Zereth is more than just a military success. It is a reminder that the strength of the human spirit cannot be measured by the weapons they wield, but by the resolve they carry within themselves. The story concludes on a hopeful note. Humanity had faced an enemy unlike any they had ever encountered, and they had emerged victorious. But the true victory lay not in the defeat of the Zereth, but in the unity and strength humanity had discovered within itself. The Zereth had been a test, a challenge that forced humanity to confront its greatest fears and rise above them. But now, with that victory behind them, humanity stood ready for whatever the future held. The ultimate victory of humanity is clear. They had proven that no matter how powerful or advanced an enemy might be, humanity's resolve would always be stronger. The battle was won, but the war was never truly over. Humanity's legacy was just beginning, and the universe would soon learn that Earth was not a place to be underestimated. It was a place where the impossible could be achieved, and where the strength of the human spirit could overcome any obstacle. In the vast expanse of space, humanity's future was bright, and no matter what came next, Earth would always be ready to defend its home and its people. The story of humanity's triumph over the Zereth dominion would be remembered for generations to come, not just as a tale of victory, but as a reminder of what humanity could achieve when they stood together. The Zereth might have been the first to learn this lesson, but they would not be the last. The universe was vast, and humanity's journey had only just begun.